So you're thinking about running, but not sure how to take the first step. My name's Brian Patterson, and I'm here to help. And welcome to Brian's Run Pod. Welcome back to Brian's Run Pod. And this week we've got a very special guest, Andrew Wren, who is a professional running coach in the local Dunedin area. I thought I would split this interview into three parts, so three chunks. And the first, in this first part, I started off by asking him how he got into running. I really hope you enjoy this interview and in all the subsequent interviews as I did. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Andrew. Welcome back to Brian's Run Pod. And today we have a special guest, Andrew Wren, who is a local running coach. And I've been wanting to speak to someone like Andrew for a while and feel really privileged that he's agreed to come on the podcast today. Andrew is a very enthusiastic coach and has a proven track record in improving and optimizing athletes from the newest to elites. He says, and I quote, "I use personal and data-driven approach to performance and improvement at every level. This can be used alongside and to inform traditional coaching methods and advice about diet and lifestyle to help you become faster and fitter." I'd like to go to the beginning. And I just wanted to know, have you always been, even at school, is running always been quite something you've been interested in?
My parents are runners.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they are still runners, in fact.
Right.
My dad is 78, and he's still running up and down mountains. So, they're runners. My brother ran for GB.
Yeah.
So I've been running I've been racing since I was 8.
Wow. Okay.
That's 31 years. I calculated recently that at the age of 39, I've been racing against 18-year-olds for 25 years.
Right.
Which I'm delighted to turn 40 next year, so I can race against 40-year-olds. I'm so excited. Let me tell you. I would say I was a kind of moderate runner. At school. I've never been good at cross country, and I occasionally get corralled into doing it now, and I still find it slightly bad. But I'm good at running down hills at great speed. I'm good at ultra marathons. I'm good at the things that we didn't really do at school. So it was actually more when I came back to running in my sort of mid to late 20s when I became actually better at it, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. And so what, I mean, are you a full-time athlete, or is this something that's kind of like a side hustle?
I would describe myself as an athlete, but I'm a full-time coach.
Full-time coach. Oh,
yeah.
right.
Coach is my full-time job.
Okay.
I do have part-time jobs, which are not part-time jobs. I do have other kind of
irons in the fire.
Yeah, sort of, but they're not financially viable in any kind of way.
Oh, right. Okay.
I produce music, and I'm a radio DJ occasionally. But I don't have any. Those are not profitable enterprises.
Yeah. So once you decided that, you know, you were going to be a full-time coach, what's the process in terms of, do you have to get qualifications or and how does that work? So
when I decided, I was working a data warehousing job at the time.
Okay.
I've had all the jobs, by the way. That's something that people find out about me. Everything from
ditto. I have as well. Yeah.
I was working a data warehousing job, and I started a Couch to 5K club at the office I was at. I realised that actually I should get some formal training on this. So I started through the England athletics qualifications.
Okay.
So I started off with leader in leader in running fitness, coach in running fitness.
Yeah.
And then the next one, which is an endurance specific. So there's the amount of qualifications that you can get is quite frankly astonishing, really.
Right.
It's a slightly different pathway to personal training.
Yes.
Which is it's very different. I plan to, over the next few months, get the athletics, some more of the athletics based ones as well, because I enjoy working on the track. So I want to do the throws and jumps.
Okay. So more field event type.
Yeah, more field. I'll do some more sprinting as well.
Yeah. And does having those qualifications, obviously it gives you kind of the education, and also probably, they probably go with the health and safety and the insurance side and that kind of thing. But do you feel that's kind of the benefit to clients to say, all right, I've got, I'm qualified to do this. Do you feel that they really care or
I'm not sure. I think it's an extremely good question, actually. I think people do care because I think I have had people ask me about industry qualifications and things like that. I think people do care. Fundamentally, I think any form of coaching, whether it be life, whether it be business, any form of coaching, it's the theory is important, and the theory behind, like the physiological theory and all that kind of aspect is important. But I would say that the ability to build a relationship is fundamentally more important from my perspective, from the way that I would approach coaching. I've trained with people. You may have seen them in local parks, like you get those British military fitness guys, and that's a whole different thing, right? It's much more geared towards being told what to do and just whereas I would philosophically want to build a positive relationship with my athlete. And work from there. I actually find it very hard to coach people with whom I don't build any kind of rapport. Like I'll occasionally meet people and I won't be able to make them laugh. Like in the first hour of meeting them, like I won't like get anything back from them. And some people are just like that, right? Some people are just like that. That's fine.
Because coaching is a two-way process.
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, has to work both ways. Yeah,
exactly. So, how do you? Just sort of more training specific, but how do you balance that volume and intensity of training to prevent overtraining and injuries?
That is the cornerstone of endurance training. I mean, it's the most fundamental, level of it. Essentially, everyone falls somewhere on a permissiveness to what's the other word I'm looking for? Everyone falls on some kind of scale where some people will need to be told to run more and some people will need to be told to rest more. Very few people have it absolutely perfect. I certainly don't. And working out the best way to persuade people of those two factors, or the best way. I mean, like if people really can't run anymore, then or people can't do more exercise, that's much less of a problem. If an athlete comes to me and tells me that they couldn't do the session that I set for them, for any reason, that's for the most part, it's fine. Like if it becomes a regular issue, then I might have to jimmy them along a little bit, off work out what's wrong. But I would be far more annoyed about people doing more than they are supposed to, or at a higher intensity. Fundamentally, there's data that you can use. So on Training Peaks, it shows quite advanced data in terms of what someone's fatigue. But realistically, the best way to gauge that is just by keeping in touch with athletes and asking how they feel. Training Peaks also has a little thing where it'll ask you, a bit like the Garmin does, will ask you how the effort felt and how you felt. And so from a red flag perspective, if I look at someone's workout and I see that it was just a 1 hour endurance run or a 45-minute active recovery and they felt terrible during it, then you know. So the balancing is always going to be different from person to person, but resting is crucial for everybody. The most difficult thing actually is getting people to rest after marathons. One of the most common things I hear about a week after someone's finished a marathon is, so when's the training going to start again? Now the pros take up to a month off.
Right.
Yes. I've heard stories of professional marathon runners basically cross training, doing mountain biking, something like that,
or whatever,
like that. You can't get me to do cardio in a gym; it's physically impossible. I mean, hey, well done to anyone who can do it, but I can't achieve it. I can't even. My record on the treadmill is 400 meters. So you will get people, but the main difficulty behind balancing fatigue and balancing workload is that fatigue is not linear. So 2 days after a marathon, you might feel like you can run another one, but the problem with that is that the fatigue might not kick in until the week after or the week after that. There's people who specialize from a psychological perspective more than a physiological perspective in burnout. Yeah. And that stress builds and builds and builds and builds over a great deal of time. It's not just not a simple thing, really.
Right.
So yeah.
Because I know on Strava they do that that fitness freshness graph thing, don't they? I don't know how. I know it's an algorithm, obviously, and as to how accurate it is and whatever.
Well, I've got I can maybe shed some light on that. So or it's the same with Training Peaks. It's accurate for a certain type of runner. Yeah. If you are a marathon runner who wants to run marathons, then it's probably reasonably accurate for you. Mm-hmm. If you are me. It is unlikely to be very accurate. Now, I say that from the perspective of someone who has run ultra marathons in the past. So that's the basis at which it sets my fitness, which is actually just workload. All it's measuring when it says fitness is just the amount of training that you've done. Yeah. So mine thinks that I am the least fit human in the history of humanity right now because I have gone from focusing on ultra marathons to focusing on the 400 meters on the track. Right. Just for a change of scenery over winter, essentially. Yeah. And in doing so, it's looking at that going, oh my God, your workload has disappeared. It's fallen through the floor. What has happened? Yes. So it's both comparative and slightly dodgy.
Yeah. Okay. So it can't be all things to all people. It's kind of only for a specific.
It's for the median runner. A lot of the algorithmic stuff, and there's some of this with the data we get from our watches and stuff like that as well. A lot of the algorithmic stuff works on the basis of the median runner, and none of us actually are that median runner, and some of us will be closer to him or her.
It has to start. Yeah, there has to be a baseline, as it were. So
sure. I know, for example, by my Garmin watch and all of my athletes' Garmin watches professes to tell them what their VO2 max is. Yeah. Now, VO2 max is a metric which can only be measured by strapping you to a machine which measures your breathing in and out. Yeah. So anything that a watch which does not attach to your face is telling you is making some assumptions somewhere. Now, I can't tell you the exact algorithm. I did actually look it up relatively recently, but it essentially, I've had mine lab tested. I've literally been to a lab and tested mine, and I know what Garmin thinks it is, and the two are not particularly similar. So,
in a previous life, I used to be a personal trainer, and they used to have those body fat percentage scales, and I used to tell people before they stepped on, I said, "This is just a guide. If you really wanted to have it done, you go to a lab, you sit in a pool and all that kind of thing, and you have, and it is can be wildly inaccurate. So it's very similar type of thing.
Although just an aside, one of my athletes was told by a very fancy central London, one of those like kind of body composition gyms.
Oh, right.
That her body fat had gone down to 9%, which, as you may well know, is physically impossible for a woman. So,
yes,
that was nice for her. And this wasn't a machine either. This was a person telling her this. Fun times.
yeah. Going back to the type of people who
sure.
I know you've just touched on some of the sort of the elite. What about people who are new to running and they come to you? Because obviously, they could have gone to, on the internet, picked out a program or whatever, but obviously they may be looking for something, they're coming to you specifically for a more kind of a personalized approach to running. What's the kind of, I don't know, challenges or, tell me a bit about that.
The challenges are different per person, as you would expect, because everyone has different reasons for wanting to run, right? So some people want to do it just because it's convenient. I've had people come to me and ask me and tell me that they hate running. Actually, I'm seeing him next week. I'm seeing him 4 times next week. Okay. So a guy came to me, we'll call him Alex because that's his name. Yeah. He came to me middle of last year and he was not a runner. I would describe him as an anti-runner. And he wanted to get into the army. So he had to pass a bleep test and he had to do a certain amount of running, right? And he came with that perspective, so he had a certain goals and certain proclivities and certain ways that he wanted to act. So you have to work around that and with that, essentially. So I had to find ways of essentially what I found was that he was quite competitive, and he would compete with me. So I competed with him. I'd set him off a minute before I set off and do things like that. Now, obviously, that's not a great way to build endurance, but we had to do a lot of run walking whilst chatting and stuff like that. So, and then you'll find other sort of entirely separate people who are essentially doing it for weight loss. So beginners. So some people want to do it just for weight loss. Some people want to do it. Everyone has their own reasons. And to be honest, any time where you can find the joy within running, because it's easy to essentially with a beginner, you could just go, okay, right, let's do the couch to 5K. We'll run for 1 minute. We'll run. What I've tended to do with absolute beginners is it's a game that I play with all standards of athlete. Right. It's a randomized animal fartlek. So essentially, there's a website that you can go to which will give you 6 random animals upon a refresh button, and I will get my athlete, whoever they are, whether they're new runner or whatever, they'll say a number between 1 and 6, and I will then press the refresh button on the website, and it will give me 6 random animals, of which their number will correspond to 1. Now, obviously, if that is cheetah, we're going to run super fast. If that is a sloth, we're going to run really slowly. If it's a goat, we might run up a hill. So essentially what I'm doing is just gamifying it. I'm making it so that they're not thinking about the fact that they're running anymore.
Yes, good point.
Making it into, because a lot of what new runners struggle with is just the sort of, on some level, the sort of drudgery. Some of the things that we actually get a great deal of joy from, it's just not as joyful when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
There is an aspect to this which is probably not a great one from a running podcast perspective, but I have had people before I did a inspirational, there's bunny ears going on there, talk to a company. And one of them in the Q&A afterwards asked me, so like, I've been running for a little while now, and when does the runner's buzz start? I just had to say to her, like, look, it might not. Like, running might not be for you. There are other sports, right? Like, it's not for everybody. You know, like I am a big advocate for it, but maybe you'd be better off on a bike or in a canoe. I don't know. Like, so yeah, it's not always for everyone. The other thing is, I actually sometimes get beginners who have already signed up for the event. In fact, quite regularly. That's what pushes beginners to come to me. And you get both types. So both extremes. So one extreme will be someone who's not really run before, but has booked themselves onto the London Marathon. I'll be receiving phone calls from those people in the next 6 months. And some of those go really, really super well. I once had a guy who couldn't run 5K and ended up running his first London Marathon in 3 hours 23.
Wow.
Which is mad.
That is amazing.
I mean, it's mad. It's a crazy one, that. And then I've had a few of those, but then I've also had people who, from the first time I've met them, I have known that they were unlikely to enjoy the marathon. Yeah. And you're then in a position where you have to sort of gauge, okay, is it worth telling this person that you don't think they should be doing it? Because a lot of the time they're doing it for charity, often a good cause, often a cause that's close to their heart, right?
Yeah.
So there are some times when I can get people through the experience. Now, what I tend to use in that situation is that you don't always have to enjoy the event necessarily. I would rather people enjoyed their training than enjoyed the event. The event is going to take 5 hours, maybe at the most, and not the most, but it might take 5 hours, might take 6 hours, but you might train that much in 2 weeks. So if they enjoy the training, and they can always look back on the marathon and be happy about it. So yeah, that's probably the most difficult person to coach, actually. The person who has signed up to an event that they are not suited to, but they care deeply about it already.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the hardest type of beginner to get.
That's it for another episode, and looking forward to speaking to you next week with some beginner hints and tips about running. I just want to let you know that you can follow me on X, or what was known as Twitter, at Brian's Run Pod. I have just recently set up a Facebook page which is called Brian's Run Pod, and I am on Instagram at Brian's Run Pod. Also, my website is www.briansrunpod.co.uk, where you can get show notes, or on whatever podcasting app you are listening to the show. Plus, all my episodes have chapter markers if you need to get to different segments of the show. Plus, leave a review, as it will help others find this podcast. Music is Happy Day by Stock Audio, not forgetting artwork by Alice Patterson. Till next week, thanks again for listening.